Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us here at Voice of Uganda Radio. I am your host, Miss Brenda, for the American Connection. Let me say thank you so much for those of you who are joining in. It has been a long journey getting back to my Wednesdays, but I'm really happy and very excited to say that the Wednesday morning American Connections will start coming back on. It's like I've explained so much on the Sunday morning program, Freedom at Hand, that, we have a lot that we're doing. There's a lot of things happening that we are not privileged to share at this moment, and we're moving about, making meetings and doing a lot of things. So, it sometimes pulls us away in the middle of the week, and I'm very, very excited and really challenged to be a part of the move forward to the new Uganda. So thank you so much for your loyalty. I got all of your emails. Thank you so much for missing me on those Wednesdays and wanting me to come back as quick as I could. And the great thing about the Wednesday lineups now is on some of the Wednesdays, Zoe Bakoko as well as Dorothy will join me in on some of these Wednesdays here on American Connection to share their views and to look at how we move into a new and a better Uganda together. So I'm very, very excited to make that announcement as well. Before I get into my program this morning, we celebrate the top 100 women in the United States this week, and the ways in which they contributed to the United States and the movement and the powers and the positions that they hold. And we have to say goodbye this morning to one of our greatest leaders, especially in the African American community. The author and poet Maya Angelou died today in her home in North Carolina, and at the age of 86. It will be a huge loss for us, but also it has been the greatest of gains for us. And I know that we'll probably start to see lots of contributes to her life and what she had to do in the movement and how she played a big role in the NAACP, which I talk and share a lot here on the American Connection about how that moved us forward. She was a huge part in the movement of that as well, because she was a secretary who volunteered just like the rest of us who are part of the movement. We volunteer our time, we volunteer our efforts to the movement to move everybody forward. And she will be very, very missed. She was a great soul. Her 86 years of life speaks volumes for the great things she did for all of us, crossing lines, crossing barriers, to really establish us as African Americans in where we are today. This is a woman who knew Dr. King, and she knew him very well, and shared those stories from time to time whenever she was able to. She was a part of the civil rights movement and that march on Washington, D.C. She was the poet who was chosen to give the first speech for Barack Obama when he became president here in the United States of America. So her legacy will live on and on and on. She is a great contributing factor to how we view and how we look at ourselves in this country today as African Americans, and not only as African Americans, but as women as a whole, the way we view our government, the way we view our politicians, our economic growth structure, and the things that have happened in our lives over the course of all the years since the 60s and since the civil rights movement. But her books, her poetry, and her teaching at the university there in North Carolina, so many things have tied her and kept her tied to the community. We have never forgotten her, and we will never forget her in life or in death. And so I just wanted to take the time to pay tribute to our fallen angel, Maya Angelou, who died at 86 in her home in North Carolina on this day. We have been talking a lot about Sam Kutesa in these last days and some of the things that he's doing and some of the things that are going on. Today, I thought it would be very good for us to take a look at the way America is viewing the up and coming votes to determine who will be the president over the National Assembly here at the UN coming up. So we need to take a look at how our senators, how our president, and how the people as a whole those who follow me on the radio and those who have heard a lot about the atrocities and things that are happening in Uganda, we're going to talk a little bit today about the American connection and how we are connecting into that. Because make no mistake, the Americans are very aware of what's going on. The Americans are very aware of how the Ugandan people are trying to move forward. The American people are very aware of your victories as well as your defeats. And the American audience is really starting to participate and take note to what is going on in Uganda. They may be like some of you, our other callers. They may not call in as much to address or talk about the issues, but it's because it's a learning curve for them. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot to absorb. And there's a lot that we just did not know was happening. There's a lot that we just did not know was going on. And so the more our eyes and ears are open to these different types of things, the more we get on board. Nelson Mandela struggled for many, many years in South Africa to bring about change in his country. And did a very, very good job. But we know that the more the American people were educated, the more the American people understood and knew what was going on. When they rallied behind Nelson Mandela and the campaign to free Nelson Mandela, it rang out loudly throughout the world. And it's important for us to never allow what's going on in Uganda to fall to silent ears. We have to continue to keep the issues and the things that concern us all, not just you as Ugandans, but us as Americans, in the ears of the American people. Because when the day comes to start to campaign for a new Uganda, we want the American people to be on board, and we want them to be a part of the stories and the compassion that will lead us in the direction in which they need to be to help. The senators, as well as the president, we will talk about that a little more in depth here in just a few minutes, have all spoken out publicly as to why Sam Kutesa will not be a good representation in the United Nations Assembly coming up. For one thing, the United Nations stands for peace, stands for liberty, it stands for justice, it stands for equality. It stands for the human rights issues that are in the forefront of all of our minds and all of our hearts. So when you think about the category that I just summed up for the United Nations, it's hard to put Sam Kutesa into any of those categories to figure out where he could fit in and where he could be to say he's moving the Ugandan people forward, because we're not looking at him from an American perspective, how he looks in a suit, how well he speaks, how the people around him in the United Nations feel about him as a whole. We're looking at him, when people look at President Barack Obama, then they have to go back and look at the American people to see, number one, are the American people standing behind the president? Is he standing for the issues of the people? And is he there genuinely to better us in every way that I just explained, or is he bringing harm to the American people in some way? So it kind of goes hand in hand. So in saying that, then we have to go back and look at Sam Kutesa. And we have to say, when we look at him, we go back and we look at the Ugandan people. If we go back today and we look at the Ugandan people as to how they feel and if they stand behind this individual, we would have a lot of question marks that would come up. And those question marks are what I want to talk about today, because those question marks leave with them questions to answers that need to be answered. And in some way, I think that he needs to stand before the United Nations and lay it all out on the table as to why he feels that he's a candidate for this. Not so much that it's Africans' turn up and someone from Africa should reside over the United Nations Assembly this year, because we'd have to then ask the question, Cameroon was in for this as well as Uganda. And what has happened that the individual for Cameroon has stepped aside and is allowing Kutesa to go forward? We understand and we know very well that people in Uganda under the administration of the sitting president have been put in such positions to stand down, to stand aside for someone else to come up and lead or move forward. Has he fallen victim to a large part of the corruption that happens in Uganda that is now happening here on American soil? And if that is the case, how do we feel about that as Americans in wanting this assembly to move forward? Because we pride ourselves on being a country that does not govern itself in that way. So do a lot of the other countries that hold the leading votes in this. And do we now tarnish our own images for the image of this individual that a lot of us are starting to question? So that was one thing that we need to keep in our mind, is why these individuals who also were up to be voted in have stepped aside for this to take place and for this to happen. We are aware of it, and we know all too well that this is the way that the government in Uganda is ran. A lot of my American audience probably doesn't understand and know that, because we don't see a government governing itself that way, but this is true, and this happens to be a lot of what happens in the way things are governed there in Uganda. So let's look at some of the reasons, as a lot of the Ugandans are very aware of, but we need to make our American audience aware of as well. So when we talk about land grabbing, when we talk about corruption, when we talk about the laws that have been passed just in a year, can we say that is being used to govern the people, or is he being used as a guinea pig? When we talk about land grabbing in Uganda, which he has done nothing to stop, but has participated in, what is mine is mine. What is not mine is not mine. So when you have a person sitting in the UN who has not spoken out against land grabbing, but has participated in it and has become very lucrative and very valuable to him, what can we say about the character of this person to lead in an assembly of people who deplore this as a way of treating other individuals or running a government? We know that corruption is another one of the things that he's participated in. And he's participated in it in a big way, and he has benefited from it greatly. Has his workers benefited from his corruption? Of course not, because we've talked about time and time again on Freedom at Hand, with all of the wealth and all of the funds that he accumulates on a daily basis, he still has people in his employment that he has refused to pay, and that he doesn't understand their anger. And his approach to dealing with this is just to simply replace the people if they're not happy to have a job, because there are other people in Uganda that need those jobs. But can I ask you, is that really employment, and is that really having a job if you're not being paid for the services in which you're rendering? And this is a man who would stoop this low to, this man makes billions of shillings a day there in Uganda, and yet he can't take 1 shilling and give it to his workers to say that I appreciate you for what you do, I appreciate you for who you are. He just doesn't pay them at all. And these are individuals that have to find ways to work, has to find ways to feed their families, and they look forward to that money. They have utility bill, they have taxes, they have all the things that this government has told them that they need to pay and need to be a part of. Yet you're working for these individuals who have set up these rules and these laws, and they themselves are not following them because they're not paying the people so that the people can honestly pay their taxes or do whatever it is that they have to do. There's a double standard going on here, because now you're putting the people in a position where you're telling them you're responsible for A, B, and C, but you're not giving them the resources which are entitled to them because of works that they have rendered over to you to pay them so that they can take care of A, B, or C. So when you look at the mindset of this as a person who is sitting on an assembly and wants to lead this assembly at the assembly coming up here in New York, as the president of that assembly, one has to start to ask the questions, because this is an individual who's sitting on a panel of people who deplore these type of treatment of people. The United States being one of those countries. And then we want this person to sit and reside over this. Let me tell you, before this show is over, you will understand the importance of all the people that still need to go out there and sign off on the petition that Sam Kutesa cannot sit in this position in the UN Assembly for these reasons that we're bringing out today. And these reasons that I'm bringing out is a collective amount of information that I've read on all the senators, as well as the president, some of the things they've come out in the media to talk about and to say, to help you understand collectively how the American people are starting to feel and rally behind this as a whole. So let's also talk about the laws. And I'm just outlining these now. We're going to talk about these a lot more in depth, but I'm just outlining them to just give us all a view of what we're dealing with here. The laws that have been passed under this man as well, that he has not spoken up, and he too has participated in these things as well. The public management bill that supports the NRM more than it supports anybody else. Is this the right for the Ugandan people when they live under a constitution that says they have the freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and then you bring laws out like this that muffles the mouths of the Ugandan people and don't allow them to speak out in the truth of what it is they're leaning towards? But we're gonna talk about that a little more in depth because of the great election that was just had there in the central region there in Uganda, with Brenda winning the election. So we'll talk about that a little more in a little bit. The anti-gay bill, he did nothing to stand against that. He did nothing to stand up to say whether this was right or whether this was wrong. He's chosen the side of silence. In this country where we have worked so hard to close those barriers between us and that community, what does that say to that law that we have passed in our own country when you allow a man to sit in an assembly where they're allowing the torturing, the killings, the brutalization of the gays there in Uganda? So how do you allow this man to sit in a position like that when a very law that he is very comfortable with in Uganda is a law that we deplore here in the United States of America and we think is very, very wrong? And mind you, a law that the sitting president, who he answers to, promised the American leaders, the Clintons being one, Obama being one, Senator Kerry being another, that he would not pass this law. Yet he passed this law. So he lied not only to his people, he lied to the American people, and he lied to the leaders that we put in place to help resolve these issues for the American people. And the person who answers to him also condoned this lie, and now we want to put him in a seat to rule in the UN. What does that say about us as a world as a whole? When we look for the truth is always what we look for to set us free. We rely on our justice systems for those purposes, and yet we will boldly overlook the fact that they have lied to us time and time and time again. Because understand, they're not just lying to the Ugandan people now. They're lying to the world and the American people as a whole. So these are some of the reasons why our senators and our president has started to speak out against the reason that this should not happen. The miniskirt law. We talked about Janet Museveni and why she hasn't stepped up in a role as a woman, as a first lady of this country, to stand up for the rights of these women, to introduce into law education and other ways to deal with this instead of allowing soldiers and other men to degrade the value of women in Uganda. In this country, we are celebrating the 100 most powerful women in the world, their roles and why we celebrate them, and we put them in the positions we do, and yet we look at a woman who is a mother of 32 million Ugandans, and her voice remains as silent as the people of Uganda. Michelle Obama, one of her greatest moves, Jacqueline Kennedy, the Bush eras, all of the different leaders and the first ladies have all stood by their husbands to say, this is what I'm championing, this is what I'm getting behind, this is how I want to move women forward, I want to move children forward, I want to work within the education system and do everything that I can to empower us as women, not belittle or degrade us. This is her brother. she has huge ties here. Not only is this her brother and her husband, but she has huge ties to set laws for herself that will work on behalf of the Ugandan women. And yet none of this has been done in any way whatsoever. And this yet too is a law that Sam Kutesa stands behind. He has participated in, and he has done nothing to change that law, to eradicate it in any way. We cannot have people in powerful positions where they are put in a position to govern over others who allow and stand for these type of things to happen. So where do we start with all of this? Because this is a lot. This is a lot. And this is a man who supports the man who put him in the position and sent him here to the United States to reside in the UN. And yet he has done nothing. He has spoken out public on none of these issues to rally behind the Ugandan people. Can I say this? The position that Sam Kutesa is in, I understand and I know that he has worked very hard to be where he is. Not so much here in the United States and in the UN, but to become a lawyer, to get in politics, to better himself and to move himself forward, to make a legacy for himself in some way. But somewhere on that path, corruption has become a great part of who he has become. The honesty and the right way of going about what he could have done for the people of Uganda and how he could have moved the people forward has fallen short in so many ways. Now, in saying that, let me say this. I understand and I know that when you think about people like Gilbert Bugenya, when you think about Bisenje, when you think about the Lord Mayor of Kampala City, and even when you think about the new elect here, Brenda Nabagenya, you know and you understand that these people are standing on principle and these people are standing on issues for the Ugandan people at whatever cost. At whatever cost. Their lives are in harm's way each and every day because of the values and the things in which they're starting to stand on. Do all these people have questions to answer about different things at different times? Of course they probably do, or some of them don't. However, we have to rally behind the truth whenever the truth presents itself. Because we've talked so much about fear and the fear in the hearts of the Ugandan people. And when we see this fear start to subside and gateways start to open up and people start to come out, we have to rally behind those things, and we have to rally behind these people and these individuals. Nabakenya, I mean, she was put on the firing line. It could have been devastating for her to still run on her morals and her principles and not step aside for the NRM to win this ticket. But she did. And for the sitting president, I've got a detour here just for a few minutes. For Museveni to sit and say that this woman rigged the elections and that's why she won the election, 16,000 is the number that put her apart from the other candidate running. The only thing the sitting president knows and understands is the corrupt way of doing things. So he doesn't understand that the people are starting to stand up and make their voices heard. He doesn't understand that the people no longer stand behind him because of broken promises and because of the way in which he's led the country. It is very hard for this individual to understand that he is no longer the first choice in which the people look to for change. So the only thing that this person can do in order to win an election like this, the by-election, is to go to the levels in which he goes to win elections. So, Mr. President, let me say this, President Museveni, just because you rigged the elections to win the elections does not necessarily mean that this is what others do to win their elections. Is it that hard to believe that the people of Uganda are changing? The hearts of the people of Uganda are changing. They are moving in a new direction. And that direction does not include you. That direction separates them from you and moves them into a direction in which they want to see themselves participate, in which they want to see themselves go. And we will make sure that what happened to Selena Abenda does not happen to Brenda Nabakenya, because it cannot happen. And we will no longer allow our voices to be silent, to allow this man to rule with a gun, to rule with his poisoning ways, and to rule in a way in which he will quiet the people of Uganda at any cost. Because the interest of the people of Uganda is no longer inside the walls of Uganda. The people and the interest of the Ugandan people has now spread it outside of the walls of Uganda. And it grows daily. Not only in the diaspora community, but in the hearts of the people of the UK, in the hearts of the people of Canada, in the hearts of the people in Australia and Germany, and in the United States of America. And we are keeping eyes on these people. We want to know how these people move forward from here. Because the United Nations, the same assembly that Sam Kutesa wants to lead as president of this assembly, that assembly is the same assembly that decided that each country had to set aside so many positions for women to be actively involved in their communities in elections, that so many seats in parliament and throughout the government had to be held for women to balance it and to bring about equality. Something that Sam Kutesa knows nothing about and cares nothing about. Because his party, the NRM, is the party that is now angry and upset at this victory that has been had there. I would love to hear him speak out on that here in America and how he feels about that. Because this is an assembly that he wants to sit and reside over, yet he doesn't even believe that the parties at hand should go and represent as a member of parliament. Now, and mind you, it would have still been a woman, because this is a seat that is held out for a woman, but we need a woman with a voice for women, not a woman who stands on the voice and reason on the side of men. So when you say, and the United Nations say, these are positions that are held for women to come in and rule and make changes in their government, they need strong women. The Ugandan people need strong, strong women with backbones who will stand up against the men and fight in favor of her people, her region, her district, and what she believes in. Not only for the males in her area, but the females as well, and the children as well as a whole. Would the member of the NRM party have done that in her region? I truly believe that she was a vote for the men. And there are women, and I'm very sad to say it, that sit on the parliament seats today in Uganda that no longer have a voice for the women, which is the reason the United Nations made a vote for women to be a part of parliament. Nabenda was one such person, that her voice still remained very, very powerful for the people, women in general, and all those of her constituents in her region. So the victory that fell on Nabakenya is a victory for women. It's a victory for Uganda as a whole. This is a victory in the centralization, the central of Uganda, but what this victory needs to do is it needs to spread to all the corners of Uganda to say, this is what we need. This is what we want. This is what the new Uganda looks like to us, and this is what we want to participate in. For a district and an area that Sam Kutesa knows just as well as Janet Museveni and her husband, this is a district in which helped them win the victory, to win the country as a whole, to move the country forward. And the treatment of the people in this district is deplorable and unacceptable in any fashion. These people still suffer to have the same things that most Ugandans have. Yet these individuals are building up wealth in this region for themselves. And the people of this region know and see these things every day. And every day they wake up and they have to ask themselves, what is this government doing to further our lives? How are we benefiting from what they're doing? And they don't see themselves benefiting at all. They've been thrown in the same pile as all the other Ugandans. They have only been used as stepping stones for these few individuals to get where they want to be. These individuals, being Sam Kutesa, has to be put in as one of those individuals as well. There is no equality in what is happening in this region. None whatsoever. And the people have spoken loud and clear by not voting with the NRM. And I think that it has angered the president. Sam Kutesa may not be able to show his feelings and his emotions about it, but I think it angers the party tremendously. But if we have to look at the party, how strong is the party really? How strong are the people that sit in Parliament today? Are they still as strong and standing behind the president as they once did? Or are they starting to see and side with the people in this central region as to the new direction in which the people need to go? We have a caller coming in, and I think this is my sister that is coming in. Go ahead and introduce yourself and come on in and say good morning.
Good morning, Miss Brenda.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing this morning?
I am well. I'm just trying to iron out for our listeners and the Ugandan people all of the reasons why we understand and we know, with all of the corruption that has gone on in Uganda, that Sam Kutesa has still participated in these things at great length and hasn't done anything to stand on the side of the Ugandan people. I also talked about our fallen angel, Maya Angelou, who gave so much. I talked about the 100 women that we're celebrating here in the United States, not just here, but these 100 women are abroad that we celebrate for what they've contributed, and that I feel like Brenda Nabakenya is one of those women who has a voice in Parliament. She's not being voted in as another voice for the men, but she's being voted in as another voice for the women. How do you feel about those things that we've discussed so far this morning?
Oh, thank you so much, Miss Brenda. Hello, all our Ugandans, beloved Ugandans, our supporters, friends. We love you all, and thank you so much for everything you are doing. The gentleman in the studio, for the time and all the efforts, we love you. Miss Brenda, what can I say? I don't want to call it a loss. It has been a blessing. Maya Angelou. Oh, my God.
Yes.
It is such a day that we are celebrating the 100 women all over. Oh. And then we lose one. But tell you what, if we take a close look, she's one of those responsible for making those women that we are celebrating today. 86 years, no loss. She has done a great job.
Yes.
She will always be our mother, grandmother, and hero. Great lessons, great sacrifice. May her soul rest in peace. And if there is any woman out there sitting back saying, hey, I'm just a girl, I'm just a woman, no.
Think again.
You are big.
Yes.
Think again. Get on board. Let's do what we have to do.
Yes.
That is the message for today. Now, Miss Brenda, Nabukenya, she's one of those that are joining. Do you know, this is a baby. This girl was born when President Museveni has been in power. 28 years. Is she 21? Lord have mercy.
Yes.
But he might get agitated. He can say, he can write, he can do whatever he wants to do. But everything that is done in the dark will come up in the open. There is a time for everything. There is a season for everything. Mr. Seven, you don't climb a tree, and you get up there, and you be so stubborn, and you refuse to come down. Okay? At some point, you have to come down. Otherwise, you're going to be forced by nature, forces of nature. Okay?
Yes.
So, it might be time that you need to get off that tree and climb down. It doesn't matter what you do or what you don't. The people of the world did speak. So, Nabu Kenya, she won. The first time she beat the same candidate for 30 votes. This time it was 16,000 votes.
Which speaks loudly for the people.
Exactly.
Yes.
You started with Nabu Kenya. You insulted her in all ways. How childish she is, because totally she refuses to join any RM. Now, you've moved on. Miss Brenda, President Museveni did write a missive, 11-page, citing election rigging in Uganda since 1961 to 2014.
Wow,
I'm
really?
still searching to see when he came to power in 1986.
Yes.
We were held hostages because it was a one-party government. So nobody else could vote otherwise. Everybody automatically belonged to NRM. After too much work from the West, they allowed other parties to participate, but they have no right to assemble, to speak, to have meetings, to campaign. Now, Mr. Museveni, in this message that you did write, I cry to see where you belong. Because it was one time and one time only when you were elected into power. The rest of the election you have rigged, you have stolen, you have beaten, you have intimidated, you have used taxpayers' money to buy votes. I find it interesting when you say what you are saying today. Just because you've been doing it, it doesn't mean that other people does it. I mean the Electoral Commission in Uganda. Everybody, that's what number one reform everybody wants. America, Europe, they have all told you to introduce an independent Electoral Commission. You have refused. Now that you think that we are so dense, you're going to sit there and tell the world how the Electoral Commission did join the hands with the opposition to steal votes for Brenda and Nabu Kenya. This is my message. I'm begging you, my fellow Ugandans, whenever you are. Please, please, please. For those who have voted for this man, this kind of arrogancy, the man is out of touch. He has lost himself, and this is a sickness. And we please make it a point, even though I know when it comes to 2016, Museveni will die, and everybody will go with him. It is going to have to be the children of Uganda to push him by force out of power. But, in the meantime, for any by-elections or any other kind of election, can we make it a point, my fellow Ugandans, to get up and vote as the world did, so that you can give this arrogant man a bloody nose?
Yes.
What does he think he is?
Well, and let me just say this. When you have a 16,000 margin, that is a lot of people. And for him thinking he wants to run totally unopposed in the next election, the people are already telling him by this 16,000 margin that he can't run unopposed. That is he wants to. I don't understand why he doesn't allow the people just to continue to speak in the voice that the people are speaking. Because out of 32 million people in Uganda, I'm sure there's someone capable, more than capable, of running against this man and winning.
Miss Brenda, we know that you have lost great men. What a country, what a nation in the world that the man cannot stand up to true competition. He cannot have a fight, a man-to-man fight. He can't stand it. Okay?
But this is a man, let me remind you, who said the people love him. So if the people love him the way he says they love him, then why can't he just have an election and let someone run against him?
This is exactly. The man said that the people of the world are high on him. Okay? He's the only one with a vision. Now, what happened in Ruel? Miss Brenda, let me give you, when they say that you add an insult to an injury, about 28 years ago, 30 years ago, the people of Ruel gave up everything they had. I'm talking about food. I'm talking about children. I'm talking about parents. I'm talking about everything. Goats, chicken, cows, cassava, sweet potatoes, everything, beans. They gave up everything they had to support this man. Not willing at the beginning, because when something is not good, sometimes you can have that instinct. But being Museveni, the way they do things, the foreigners in Tanzania, they attack the government, put on uniform, army uniform, they come and kill people, they come and insult people, and they sit back, and they say, you see what the government is doing? In the middle of the night, the families are having dinner, they come, and they kill the wife, they kill the father. You know, they target families they know that's a rich family. They have many children, boys they need to join them. They kill. And people got angry. Decided to support him. They gave up everything. They won the war for so long. Actually, during those 5 years, time came when the people started questioning that this is not going anywhere. And the people wanted to pull out. Those men who started asking the hard questions, they are winners today. They were all killed. Okay? Time came, the war wasn't going anywhere. The Kabaka of Uganda was brought in, talked to his subjects. People are accepted, listened to him. They brought this man in power. When they reached Kampala, this smart president of ours, Miss Brenda, all along in the bush, the very prominent Baganda and in northern Uganda, soldiers, colonels, big men who worked so hard, young, vibrant men, he knew that would give him trouble because he knew very well he wasn't going to keep his promises. They turned back and they shot them one by one. Okay? Those, the veteran who got injured up to this day, they have never compensated. Some of them seek medical treatment, they can't get none. We go back to the families who gave up everything. Some families, they went in, they totally, nobody remained. What do these good people do? They went back, passed this land bill. They knew those lands that nobody was there to claim those lands. The children are dead, the parents are dead, some of them were too young. Instead of taking care of the orphans, they looked for ways to going back in Ruel to grab land. They have farms, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cows.
You know, this is the great thing about the Truth Commission that will come into the new Uganda. Because those people are going to have to give account to how they accumulated this land. And when they can't, under the new Uganda, the same thing will happen there that happens in Sweden, that happens in America, that happens anywhere in the free world. That land falls back to the government and to the people in whom it belongs, not to the hands of people who cannot give accountability to how they accumulated this land. Also, when we talk about tax, the normal Ugandans are taxed relentlessly on everything. We know that taxes are not being paid on these lands in the way that it needs to be. When the Truth Commission comes in there and finds out this information, these people are going to have to pay taxes on all of this wealth that they've accumulated over many, many years, because you know that they're not doing it, and the records will show. The records will be there and the records will show.
Yes, Miss Brenda, but it is none other than Museveni himself and his brother Salim Saleh. These are not regular Ugandans taking these lands.
Well,
anyway,
exactly.
Yeah. So the fact is that the people of Luweo, the schools that were bombed, okay, up to today, they are roots there, they are bushes. Nothing has been, they haven't done a thing. That's what I'm trying to say, that
and this is what I'm saying about,
can't he wake up?
Yeah. And this is
the
what
people of Luweo are tired.
Yeah. Sam Connectio.
Every election, you go back and you promise something.
Yes.
Okay, my anger here is, Miss Brenda, that how can he stand in the world that I'm taking so much time to explain this history, that these are the people who supported him. This was his heart bringing him to power. He hasn't done a single thing. Instead to take away more. And every 5 years he went back, one empty promise after another. Now the people have stood up to speak. And he stands up there and he said that they did rig elections and they did steal votes.
Well, let me say
that's
this.
Why.
Yeah, let me say this, and you can comment to this. Because we know in Africa, on the continent of Africa, you have more betrayal from the leaders to their people than anywhere else in the free world. One of the greatest leaders of that would be Uganda. We know and we understand just from some of the comments that you made that Sam Connectio is very, very aware of these things and has participated in them all. So when we go back to say, we don't want anyone to say we're beating up on this man, that he deserves this and he should have this. But when you go back in the history of not only the president and his brother, but the president's wife and the president's brother-in-law as well, these are atrocities that have happened to the Ugandan people that we don't understand, and we do not feel the need for this man to come into an assembly basing his whole life and his wealth on lies, to come now and think that we should be a part of the lies that he's fed to the Ugandan people for so long. It's something that has to be contained, and we don't want that spreading in the United Nations or anywhere in the free world.
Miss Brenda, you made a comparison. You said, let us look at Sam Connectio in comparison with the Ugandan people, where they stand right now and how they feel. Mm-hmm. You went back to remind us that Cameroon had the chance to stand up for this.
Yes, they did.
African turn to take the president of the UN Assembly. But for some reason, they declined and Uganda took over. The same question we have about the African Union for anonymously choosing and endorsing this man. But as we know, Cameroon there is dictatorship as much as in Uganda. And
yes,
out of the two, they speak the same language.
Yeah. Now, that's why I say the continent of of Africa, because like you're saying, it's everywhere.
Yes. So, how did he beat everybody, like the whole continent? We have some good. Tanzania is one of good countries. We have Botswana. South Africa is there. And there isn't a single person to stand up to say that one person will challenge this. It is very absurd, and there are questions that need to be seriously asked. Yes. Because we know the way the 7 works. We know how.
And this is the thing. It's very obvious to us. This is why I wanted to bring this topic to the American people. Because for the Ugandan people, it's very, very obvious that these type of things happen. They've seen it time and time and time again. But we need the world, and we need the American people especially, to understand that there's something not right when you have all of the other countries to step aside and allow this to happen, when they themselves know it.
Yes. An investigation needs to be carried out. In fact, we need to hear from Cameroon what happened. We need to hear from the African Union what happened, because we need the truth, okay? Of all nations in Africa, Uganda shouldn't be. Not because that we don't want it. We would have been happy.
It's a proud time. It's a proud
Yes.
time. Yes.
But it is not in the interest of the world, the UN, Ugandans, for the great leaders who have really served their nations faithfully. You know, that is not justice. And actually, that Sam Kutesa becoming the president of the UN Assembly, you know, it violates the meaning of the word UN. It's birth as we know it. Because basically it was about human rights. It is about what happened during Hitler, what Hitler did to the Germans.
Yes.
When everybody blamed each other, from nation to nation, from church to church, from tribe or ethnic group, that you people, where are you when this was happening? Now, in the case of Uganda, Ms. Brenda, you have listed everything. Surely, Sam Kutesa, a man who makes 81 million shillings a day, just from one enterprise, the Entebbe airport, you can't afford to pay your workers, and you want to be the president of the UN General Assembly?
I know. Oh, my God.
Sam Kutesa. We are talking about children soldiers, Kadogos. Since 1986, Museveni's invention, up to this day, they are children soldiers. In Rwanda, in Congo, talk about M18 and M23, the UPDF up to this day. Your brother Salim Saleh, they recruit children, take them to Afghanistan, Iraq, and they push their ages up. But remember, the Americans pay these kids. But guess what, Miss Brenda? When these children come back injured, they come back looking for their monies. They are not even given a penny. For those who are injured, they suffer until they die. But Mr. Sam Kutesa...
And how do you take the money out of the hands of a dying person? Because
Yes.
let's give this stuff a face. I mean, let's just not talk about the issues and let people bypass it. Let's give this a face. You're taking money out of the hands of a dying man. And then his
Child.
Yes, and a child. Because we understand and we know that the AIG is one of the biggest insurers here in the United States of America that was given insurance so that these injured individuals would be taken care of. Because
Yes,
we know
ma'am.
that it's the right thing to do. And this money comes to a government of people, a man who makes 81 million shillings a day, and the other family members that make so much money a day, and yet they would still take the money out of the hand of a man laying on the ground dying.
Yes. Mr. Sam Kutesa owns the bank which channels that money.
Yes, he does.
And they make sure that the poor children and the men and the women who went to work, they don't get a pen. That the sick children who lost their childhood, no education, some of them sacrificed. Okay? They don't get a pen.
And
Now,
these are the questions that we need to ask him from an American standpoint, because, like you said, this money from the AIG goes into his bank. And the dead can't speak for the dead. The dead can't say they didn't give me the money, and they know it. But you stand on your morals and you stand on your principles as doing the right thing. And this is a man that wants to lead the assembly.
exactly. For the dead, they don't even report. Even now, really, in the UPDF, you know, they think that too much money bring your body back home, burial and all that is much. They sit on that information so they can use the money. But Miss Brenda, for some good reason, there are so many children that are still alive, suffering. Last time we had there about also 60 suing. They did not pursue a case in Uganda because they know they are not going to do anything. They pursued it here in the U.S. They are suing that insurance company because they have never received anything. These things are there and the evidence is there. So our fellow listeners, if they want to follow up, and it is up to us to follow up, and it's the right thing, really, This man, does he have a family? Does he have children? Does he have employees? We have already heard for those who work for him in the airport. First of all, it looks like rubbish. All they want, take out. The employees, they have to find their way to work. They have to go back home. They have families. They don't get paid. Now, does this look like a person who can go to the UN Assembly? What is he bringing there? Now, Miss Brenda, this is very, very, very disturbing. Now, you haven't even touched corruption.
Oh, I know.
There's too much money. We talk about the chogam. We talk about the turo oil. We talk about embezzling money from poor Ugandan taxpayers, to go and do your own, repair your hotels, renovate your buildings as you want. But I am also curious, Miss Brenda. The public management bill was passed under his nose. He's the top advisor of President Museveni. I want to know, I haven't heard anything from him. The last time when he was on Air France, they asked him about this petition that my fellow Ugandans, you have done a good job. Opposition leaders in Uganda, every Ugandan and our friends, whenever you are, please get the Blackistan News, find the article, sign that petition. Sam Kutesa should not be. Where was he when the public management bill was passed? Because, Miss Brenda, let me revisit it well for just 5 seconds. Now, the people who were during this past election for Brenda and Kenya, remember people were tear gassed very heavily. Yes. People were beaten, people were intimidated, okay? The president worked with the sacks of money to buy votes. The opposition, they don't have money, they can't even campaign, but he still lost. In the name of the public management bill, this man has all the freedom to do what he wants and oppress the rest. Now, Mr. Sam Kutesa, where are you? Where are you on this? After doing all this intimidation and torture, people were tear gas, they stood put to protect their votes, Miss Brenda, that's why. People didn't go back home after voting. They stood by. And now you walk out that elections were rigged. And Sam Kutesa, where are you? Where are you? I want to know where you are right now about this anti-gay bill. Because, Miss Brenda, there is an article on Observer. When you get a chance, 5 months down the road since this bill was signed into law, I'm telling you, okay, that one Uganda on top of the other boy that was killed, there is a woman who was killed. 7 people have been arrested. 10 people have been evicted from their homes by their landlords. They call them, give them 1 week that according to evidence, you are gay, you are lesbian, whatever. You need to vacate, Now, 100 people, they have been in exile in Kenya. Some of them, they are seeking asylum from the rest of the world. 6 people have been fired from their work. Tell me. What is this? What is this? And the sentence is life in prison? Yeah. You cannot look to see how many people are dying when we don't have no hospitals. How many people die in road accidents a day because we don't have no roads. How many women die a day giving birth? Look, Masaka Hospital.
Yeah,
and you are here.
Yeah, you gotta ask the question, Dorothy, which is this: with people going to bed hungry, with Ugandans living off less than a U.S. dollar a day, with no medical treatment, people are dying on the floors in hospitals. They're not dying in beds; they're dying on the floor, using every ounce of their being and their family to get them to these institutions only to die because there's nothing there to help them. And you have a government that's more worried about evicting gays and gays losing their jobs. You have a government that's more interested in what women are wearing and the example that they're setting out in the street. You have a law that's more worried about a corrupt election than it is about its own people, and then you wonder why the people are voting in a massive amount of 16,000 more in votes. Let me tell you this, Dorothy, and you can, I'm sure you can agree with this. The people are speaking out, and the people are not speaking out in the favor of the sitting President Museveni. They're not speaking out in favor of his family and the injustices that have been done to them. And the people are speaking out loud and clear in the only way they know how, because the public management bill has been there to silence their voices. So the way that they're speaking out is through their vote. Because the vote, even though it's silent, look how much this has ringed outside of the walls of Uganda. Look at the conversation we still are having about this election. So the public management bill was put there for a purpose that is not serving the president very well right now. Because in loud volumes, the silence of the people is ringing out on the internet, in the social media, and the news everywhere. All around, this by-election is making history as to the fact that the Ugandan people are no longer showing any favoritism towards their sitting president. And he's got to know that. He's got to be hurt by that a great deal.
You know, you are right. You know, President Museveni, the only one that has a vision. Let us connect some dots here. So, he forgot what he was supposed to do. In the name of being greedy, he figured that by signing this public management bill, he was going to silence every Ugandan. Remember, nobody can reach to talk to the people. I mean, barely. We know that Professor Kenya came up and the others, they tried the best they could. But according to the reason the bill was signed, Ms. Brenda, was basically first, it was to make sure that the opposition they don't get close to the people. They can't tell the people, because he calls it what? They incite violence. That's what the word he uses. Okay? Now, on the other hand, he has everything. He has the money, he has everything. You know? Mm-hmm. So, I don't know when you say that you're gonna, at one time, you know, enough is enough. Because according to the report,
people are saying, yeah.
Yes, people would close their doors at this good lady Nawanga. They would just close their doors because they didn't want to hear anything. Okay? Mm. They didn't want to hear anything. And for God's sakes, those who ate the money, it was their tax monies in the first place. Not that I encourage corruption, but it got so worse, Miss Brenda, that at one time, President Museveni was in Luwalo campaigning for Narwanga, and these people surrounded him and they were demanding these yellow envelopes he normally uses to pay people to buy votes. And the president answered and he said, "Oh, I'm not God or Jesus that can make everything happen in one day." One day? The people are trying to remind him the empty promises he has made years after years. The people are trying to mention that last time you were here, you gave brown envelopes so and so, I didn't get nothing. And I've been doing ABCD. You know, the veterans were at his head trying to remind him that we are still here with bullets in our back. And he turned and he said, "I'm not God or Jesus who can do everything in one day." Miss Brenda, one day, according to the calendar, it has been 28 years.
Yes, it has.
Oh, my
goodness.
Let me
tell you, on that note, we're going to go ahead and take a break here. You are listening to Miss Brenda and Madam Dorothy here on Voice of Uganda Radio for the American Connection. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Yefa abavubuka envumulo akaleero kansonga kakubye ndi mu mudu ya kigoma saagala nyombo kubanga eno saawa ya ndongo bagambye saagala nyombo eno saawa ya kigere wamasembera mulamu bwasoba jangu twetale byansi byakoleka leka nzine nenzinamu maama mulamu bwa kiseera ate omuziki zuli sana leka nzine nenzinamu mulamu bwa kiseera ate omuziki tamu sana nze sikyalosi nze sikyalosi ndi boss sikyalosi danse abange buno bulamu bumpi zenkugambye kale mundeke nange gwenzijukiramu kyenvudde endowooza tekuba naffe acolekawo dada ne bagenda kaganga etalimu sana omama ulalaye ati tobaako nakyo ŋŋamba jangu omuziki tugusamba gambe tobaako nakyo ŋŋamba jangu eno twekyange leka nzine nenzinamu maama mulamu bwa kiseera ate omuziki zuli sana leka nzine nenzinamu mulamu bwa kiseera ate omuziki tamu sana zina mwawo zina yelelele yelelelo yelelele yelelelo anko nze tomala atonewa nze katomala mama tonne sipata leka nzine nenzinamu mama mulamu bwa kiseera ate omuziki zuli sana leka nzine nenzinamu mulamu bwa kiseera ate omuziki tamu sana nze sikyalosi nze sikyalosi ndi boss sikyalosi danse abavubuka envumulo abavubuka envumulo eno biiti yabbawa.
Hello, and thank you so much for coming back and joining me here. I'm your host, Miss Brenda, for the American Connection. Thank you so much to all our listeners that are participating and being a part of the program today. Like we said, it's been about 6 or 8 weeks I've been off the air, so we do appreciate you for continuing to follow the programs here. Tune in with me next Wednesday also, because the Honorable Zoe Bakoko will be joining me next Wednesday on the American Connection. We'll announce that. We'll put that out on our Facebook, and we'll announce it doing Freedom at Hand on Sunday as well, that she will be in the audience and a part of the show next Wednesday here on the American Connection. You know, Dorothy made some very good points when we went out here. I do want to let you guys know that we are down to our last hour of the program. If you do want to call in and participate and be a part of the program, please feel free to do so. We are down to our last hour, and we will continue to talk about the topic at hand here is Sam Kutesa and how he ties into so many other things that, you know, we have to address here. Let me say this, as Dorothy will come back in here as well. There is no place anywhere in the new Uganda for dictatorship. Dictatorship is the way of governing of the old. It is not the way of governing of the new. And what we need to do as we move forward to a new Uganda is this. We have to stand side by side with the young, side by side with the youth, give them the wisdom and the knowledge in which we know in the first part of the government so that they can take over and move the country forward in a direction that will benefit for all. The laws and everything have to be set up in a new Uganda that works for the people of Uganda. We can no longer give the power of Uganda to one chair, that chair being the president of that country. We don't do it in the United States of America. They don't do it in Sweden, Germany, China, anywhere that I know of. You cannot give that much power to an individual in a chair. Otherwise, a country is run into ruins. And I think the biggest fault of what has happened in this government is that there's too much power in one place and not spread it out amongst everyone. So when I say there is no room for a dictatorship in the new Ugandan, Dorothy, what do you have to say to that?
Well, Miss Brenda, it is high time. You can imagine, I will not be tired to remind our fellow listeners. Remember, 1986 when President Museveni came to power, President Reagan was serving the U.S. Now you start counting down the road. How many Ugandan children would have served the country, brought some other ideas? Because every time you get a new president, you get new ideas, Miss Brenda, because everybody is unique. Everybody has a role to play. Everybody participates. That's how countries, that's how nations grow.
Yes.
Okay? But here, this brings a great, great sorrow. Tears my heart. That actually, for those who are trying to show and inspire as presidential materials or people who continue to be able to serve in those big positions, they instead die because they are a threat. People with great talent, because somebody is so greedy, somebody is very selfish. It should be me, President Museveni, and my family. And then, people who stand up to the truth, people who prove themselves to be performers, they die because the man cannot compete. Professor Bukenya's son is dead. He proved to be a threat. You either end up in prison or you die because the man cannot face competition. He cannot take on a fight man to man. It has to be a gun. It has to be a car accident. It has to be some kind of poisoning. It has to be fire, anything. You name it. You don't have to be bad in Uganda to die. The children of Uganda knows it and our neighbors knows it. I use you from one step to the next, then I have to get rid of you, just as you use a ladder. You know, after you get where you go, you knock it down, not knowing that at one time in point you might want to come back down. But we have lost so much, Miss Brenda, in terms of people with vision as far as our economy is concerned, and those people with the talent, and those who strive to serve their country honestly.
Yeah, because with the by-election, one of the things we still, even though there was a victory in this by-election there with Brenda Nabakenya, we still have to understand that the struggle still continues and it moves forward. That we still have a lot of work to do, and we can't be sidetracked by this one election. We have to make sure there's more than this one election. We have to continue to move forward. Our biggest challenge in front of us right now, Dorothy, is Sam Kutesa. The only way we will silence the mouths of this regime, of this sitting president and his family, is one victory at a time. One victory at a time. We have to continue to close the doors so that they will start to understand that everyone is on board and we will no longer accept the things that they are allowing to happen to the Ugandan people. We will no longer accept the fact that Sam Kutesa wants to sit. I mean, we can, because the victory of him sitting in the UN is not a victory for the Ugandan people. It's only a victory for the NRM and their people and the president, as far as I am concerned. And those are the issues that I've written to Washington, D.C. on. We are but yet another victory in his trophy, cabinet, of something that he can put on a shelf and say, look what I did, look what I accomplished, look at what I achieved. Now, some people may go to say this, Dorothy. Is Sam Kutesa being used as a guinea pig by the sitting president to get what the president wants? I say not. You can debate this with me, but I say that he's not being used as a guinea pig simply for the reason that I've talked about before. He has participated in everything that is bringing and continues to bring Ugandans to their knees. So I don't think he's being used as a guinea pig here. I think he knows what he's doing, and I think that the crown on his head shines just as brightly as the crown on Museveni's head. What do you think about that? Comment to that if you will.
Miss Brenda, you are very, very right for a few reasons. First of all, right now as we speak, you want to remember that Mr. Sam Kutesa is a lawyer by profession, a brilliant one. Okay? Now, we know, being a lawyer, even though for 28 years or so, or 25 or 20, that Mr. Sam Kutesa by profession couldn't have earned, even though he would have had other businesses and whatever he's doing, he wouldn't have earned about $800 billion. So, as you see, he has gained a lot from the regime. They share. And for that matter, they have a lot, him and Museveni, because, look, this is the man, he's a top advisor, right? So, he has gained so much wealth that he has a lot to protect. So we should not be fooled that he's being used by Museveni. Yes, we agree that one of the things on the agenda here to get in the UN, there is a lot of atrocities. Okay? We are talking about over 7 million people dead in the region. Uganda was fined $10 billion for what happened in Congo. We know what happened in Rwanda, Burundi. We know what is happening in Southern Sudan. We know the rape capital of the world. Okay? We know our neighbors, like Galanga, is dead today. So what I'm saying is, Miss Brenda, that, yes, there is one point on the agenda for Mr. Kutesa to get in the UN Assembly, meanwhile to do what people want to call to wash out or shine. Mr. Museveni is like he's a good man and to erase all what they have done, which basically they can't do. But that's one of the things. But that cannot lead us to think that Kutesa is being used here. He knows exactly what he's doing, and he has a lot to protect and fight for. That's what my take is on that.
Yeah, because you've almost answered a little bit of the question I had, which is a big question here. Is Uganda better off than the DRC, South Sudan, Somalia, or Nigeria? I would say that they're not. I think the people of Uganda, I mean, the president can say all he wants when he attacked Nigeria, about Nigeria getting help from the UN to find those lost girls. He simply made the statement that he would never do such a thing because he's capable of protecting the Ugandan people. So we listen to that and we say, yes, but are you really protecting the interests and are you really protecting the Ugandan people? Because we know that the Obama administration has had to help in combat with the LRA, with the Lord Resistant Army before. And we know that there are other areas, the Northern Uganda Recovery Act, where U.S. had to participate and take part in that. So for the president to say, I'd rather hang myself than ask for help from anyone, I think we're all about ready for him to go ahead and hang himself so we can get on with the business of taking care of the Ugandan people. Comment on that for me, if you will.
I think he did hang himself. Because you can't afford this kind of contradiction. Okay, yeah. This is a man First of all, the U.S. boots have been, is it been 2 times now when the U.S. had to send in support in search of Mr. Connie. But, and that makes you, Miss Brenda, because if you don't want to even, this can be a whole other show and a whole other topic, because this is ridiculous. This is the man who managed to overthrow country over country, assassinate after one assassination after another. And here he have this Connie, he's saying that, he has needed help. As a matter of fact, Mr. President, you are not true on your word. You needed help, and you've been calling for help, from this Connie, from the ICC to the U.S. government, trying to get help. Except that, smart people, there are some smart people. The reason he keeps calling, for years and years, this man has managed to gain and receive lots of aid through the Connie. Every time he feels like he raised the red flag and the money pours in to fight the Connie. Except that this time around, the helpers and the good friends, they just want to end up on the ground to see what is happening. That is another story too. But as far as Nigeria is concerned, President Museveni hanged himself. The second point, he has failed big on the security of the Ugandan people. Since right from 86, okay? Let me tell you, Obote and Amin might have killed a lot, and what we know now, according to the research, that Museveni's foreigners from Tanzania, they participated a lot into this killing just to make people tired of the regime so that they could get support and take over. Not that Amin didn't kill or Obote, they did. For sure, they are responsible. But as we are talking about those camp, that camp in Chichusa, where a camp where all the women and the children and those who couldn't fight were attacked and all killed. Okay, because Museveni have been to the camp asking for men, younger men, and old men and women who could fight to help them join them, but they refused. This man came, they killed all the babies, the women, the old who couldn't fight, and then came back and said, "Oh, you see, we told you this government is bad," and they left those who could fight. Smart people sometimes don't think. Now, who would do such a thing? Obote's government? Can you imagine? They have so many mass graves in northern Uganda. I mean, you can cite one site after another. Where is the protection, Miss Brenda? Up to this day, Amin and Obote were brutal because they did it in the open. But this man has used so many tricks in the silence. And the evidence is there.
Yeah. Yes. I know I have to ask the question. I'm going to get off Sam Kutesa just for a few minutes, but he still ties into everything we're talking about here. So he's never without being a part of what we're talking about. We have a call, so I'm going to go ahead and take this caller real quick, and then we'll go back into our conversation. Hey, caller, introduce yourself and come on in.
Hello, good morning. I'm really happy that you are handling this situation tightly and you're not letting it go.
Yes.
This is Chuanuka Lawrence from New York calling in. And I really appreciate you ladies for what you are doing. I don't even know where to begin when it comes to the issues that you have raised. I will be going through about 3 topics that you have raised, which are very fundamental for us to understand this regime. One issue that you really tackled well, Madam Brenda, is the issue of concentration of power. And you see Museveni running crazy like a headless chicken, trying to figure out what happened to him in Ruel, because he saw power slipping out of his hand. Even though he tried to rig the election, now he is accusing the opposition in Uganda for being in cahoots with the Electoral Commission rigging the elections. Okay, this is very scary to him, that even when he tries to rig, even when he tries to take away people's power is slipping away from his hands. The people of Uganda, in general, are not used to concentrated power. The idea of concentrated power is so foreign in this part of the world. When you look at the traditional regimes that existed before the coming of modern politics, you find that in the areas where they had chiefdoms, let's say in Acholi, we had the Ruot Kaka, who was the head of the chiefs, and these chiefs had powers at the local level where they were able to decide things in a very effective manner. Now, if something was not able to be decided at the local level, it was pushed up the next level until it reached the most supreme root in the region. The same happened in central Uganda, where the Kabaka or the Omukama had chiefs below him. And these matters started at Chigango, they went to the Muluka, they went to Chitauluzi, until they reached the king's palace to be decided. But Museveni, when it comes to each and everything, whether it's a market stall, whether it's handing down cash for campaigns, or whether it's about launching a tap water for a high school, or whether it's launching a national project like the power dam at Bujagali, he is everywhere and at every location because he believes in concentrated power. And this is not the way administrations are run. Administrations are not micromanaged. This is a big, big mistake which has led to all the corruption that you see in the country, of which the person we've been talking about over and over is Sam Kutesa, who is the epitome of corrupt behavior in Uganda. For example, Kutesa was able to buy the national airline properties of Uganda from the government for less than $20, where he makes close to $250,000 in profits per month. So, and the people have tried to do investigation. He's been censored, but this is the person they are pushing to the UN General Assembly. And the biggest problem here is that, because I received a message from a friend of mine who is a minister in Museveni's cabinet, and he was telling me that, unfortunately I don't have my email here. I would have opened my email and read the whole message. But in a nutshell, he's telling me that those of us who are involved in this campaign against Kutesa, we should pull back because this is not about our local politics. This is about Uganda's identity and Africa as a continent, because it's time for Africa to shine at the UN. Now, I replied and I told him, if it's about Africa to shine at the UN, you do not send somebody soiled. You don't send a stinking person to the UN. There are other decent Ugandans within the diplomatic service who can be chosen to be at the UN. We have no objection about a Ugandan being at the UN, but we need someone who is decent. When we make the mistakes of sending people because they have appeased us through corruption or in some other ways, we end up having some major problems at our hands. These are the issues that we need to deal with effectively. For instance, let's forget all the corruption. Kutesa goes to France And he tells the cabinet meeting of the French government, where he is lobbying to be endorsed, because the French are among the forces that have been holding out an endorsement among the members of the Security Council. He goes there and he tells them that those who are worried about the AHA bill, or the Anti-Homosexuality Act, they should not worry about it, because Uganda is not going to implement it. What is a lawyer talking about? That we passed a law onto our books against public demonstration, but we are not going to be implementing this law. What kind of intellectual dishonesty? Or he's very intelligent. I don't want to say intellectual bankruptcy, but intellectual dishonesty being exhibited at the highest level. That you passed a law that you are not going to be implementing. That is, in America street talk, BS.
Yes.
I believe personally that one of the problems in Uganda today is, in Museveni's mind today, is traced to some of the things that General Sejusa has been saying and other people have done, because we believe there is a file that has been sent to the ICC, and it details the criminal behavior of the regime in Uganda. And I think what I'm going to do in the next few days, either on this program or on some other programs, I'm going to try to document a few murders that have been carried out by this regime in Uganda. But just as a tip on the iceberg, just look at this. The NRA murdered people in northern Uganda in their thousands, where genocide was carried out. You can look at the place called the Alelo at Kotgwang. The UPDF killed 32 people. At Panakrak in Lateko, they killed 37 people. In Panjabon, they killed 34 people. You can go on and on and on and on and find people who were killed in their hundreds in northern Uganda. We have all this documented. Dates, locations where these killings took place. And this is what the NRM government is worried about. That if they do not act quick enough to go and neutralize the ICC, that's why Museveni has been vehemently opposed to the ICC in regards to the case in Kenya. Because once the evidence starts to come out, it will be found out that he was also involved in the killings in Kenya. No wonder the local people in Kenya actually uprooted the railway line going to Uganda in a protest against the actions of the UPDF or the NRA, the Museveni army, that had been deployed in Kenya during the elections. So Kutesa is not going to the UN just by accident. As Dorothy said, he is heading out there to neutralize the ICC, make new friends, make more friends, so that the current process, because the ICC process takes time, which is investigating the behavior of the regime in Uganda, is curtailed. This is the kind of criminality that the regime in Kampala is fond of doing. And if we delay and do not work very hard and stop Kutesa from going to the UN, we are going to be committing a major omission in our responsibility as people who are supposed to be protecting our brothers. These people are dead, but their families are still with us. They need justice, and the justice must be seen to be done for them. Kutesa's project is to neutralize the ICC and stop the process of prosecuting the criminals in the Ugandan regime, and we must fight him to the end. We cannot allow this to continue. Therefore, when you see Museveni crying like he did yesterday in that document he issued claiming that the opposition rigged the elections, he is so worried that when he leaves power, where is he going to be? Because he knows that he's being investigated and he's going to face trial. Therefore, as a people, we need to unite. We need to work doubly hard to stop the Kutesa project and make sure that there is regime change in Uganda eventually and have these people face the law as they must. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much, too, for your time and for calling in and being a part of the program. And I'll let my other callers know, too, we're down to the last 30 minutes of the show. So if you want to call in and be a part of the conversation here and the American Connection, please feel free to do so, where we're talking about Sam Kutesa and all the reasons, all the many, many reasons why this man is not the best representation of the people of Uganda. Dorothy, comment on what Lawrence was just sharing there with France. France is standing up and starting to ask the same questions as the United States of America. And yet Sam Kutesa, in the face of the French, he lied. He lied.
Oh. At least some time back, I came out and I said, and I'm like, God have mercy, I'm not a lawyer, but I could have performed better than that. Look, you on Radio France, they ask you about this petition and what's going on, and the lawyer stood up and said, I'm not worried. Those are lies. With all the arrogance in the world, Miss Brenda, you couldn't find a middle ground of explaining what was going on? I read that and I'm like, oh my God. Oh my God. But in other words, there is nothing to hide there. You have no words to explain what is going on. You can't even find a middle ground and see, let us do some investigation and see the quick beat of whatever they are saying and what is going on here. But I'm not worried about that. Those are lies. So, that says millions and millions of words. When we talk about, you see, something that really, really, really tickled me is this, whoever sent that message, that for those who are fighting this, we should pull out and don't say anything because it's not about the political, local politics of Uganda. So, if that makes it right, it is time for Africa to shine. Miss Brenda, that make me think I want more answers. Isn't Cameroon in Africa? I need to know why Cameroon had to pull out, to give way to Sam Kutesa. Okay? Because if it is about Africa shining, my dear, they should find a credible candidate from a credible nation which knows what all democracy is about, not dictatorship.
Yeah, because this is the thing, Dorothy. I understand what Lawrence was saying. It is not that we do not want Uganda to be praised and seen and glorified in the eyes of the world as sitting as president of the UN Assembly. That's not what we don't want that. What we're saying is put in place someone who is capable of speaking and standing up for the Ugandan people, which this is something that Sam Kutesa has not done. And he still denies it to this day that there's anything wrong with what he is doing and how he is trying to move the country of Uganda forward. When everything within us tells us that there is something wrong with this, you cannot lead in an assembly where the rest of the world is appalled at what's happening in Uganda and expect the things that you tell the Ugandan people to be okay in the ears of and the eyes of the rest of the world. Because social media keeps us very connected. Social media keeps us very, very connected. And within social media, it is not what you tell us anymore. It is what we see, what we hear, and what we know to be true. So for God's sakes, stop living in the past. in Uganda thinking that the rest of the world does not see and understand and know what's going on. Treat us with the intellect that we deserve, that we read the papers, that we listen to radio, that we view things on social media, and we're listening to one another. When France stands up to want accountability for Sam Kateso to answer to some of the questions that they had, not only are the French interested in that, but the Americans are interested in that, the Canadians are interested in that, the UK, everybody, we're all interested in it as a whole, as a unity. And until they start to get on board and start to understand that there is unity in the world, and that is what the UN represents, the unity of the world to make sure that equal rights, liberties, justice of all people are put on a platform where they're respected. Don't come and treat us like we're ignorant and that we don't know what's going on in your country. The people of Uganda may be silenced, but we don't have to be silenced outside of the country, and we will continue to stand for these people to give them a voice. I know you wanted to comment on that, Dorothy, so I'll go ahead and give you a few minutes here. Go ahead and comment on that if you would.
Miss Brenda, let us make an announcement. Because our Maker is merciful. Is it a coincidence that this article had to come out today? Okay. Look, do you remember what President Bill Clinton said? What did President Museveni say? President Museveni told Bill Clinton that the law was passed but it's not going to be implemented. What did Mr. Sam Kutesa tell the French? What did he say? The law was passed. It is written, people spend time, and people are paid, and this law is taken to the parliament, and it was signed, and the law is not going to be implemented. Now, let us make an announcement. Fellow Ugandans, friends, and well-wishers, can you please go to Observer today? The report says, Human Rights Report cites anti-gay deaths and violence. I read the details, okay? Mr. Sam Kutesa is saying the law was written, but it was not going to be implemented. But it was. Here we go again. I said, since 5 months down the road, one woman was killed by fire. Okay? 7 people have been arrested. 10 people have been evicted from their home by their landlords. 100 people are on the run in Kenya and neighboring country. 6 people have been fired from their work. Miss Brenda, I have no words help me here. The law was signed, but it is not being implemented. And the sentence is life in prison. I need Mr. Sam Kutesa to come out and explain this. Please go and read. When we say people lie, how is it that this is not about local politics of Uganda? What comes in Uganda can spread everywhere in the world, and it is contagious. It is not going to the UN. It's not fair for the children of Uganda. It is not fair for the whole world. If the man is soiled, if it is about Africa shining, let us find a credible country with a credible person to participate and make Africa shine. Yes, Uganda, we are in trouble. We have been ruled for 30 years. Total misery. No social service. It is the soft, kill. Nothing else. Still. Mr. Museveni, the president, and his top advisor, Mr. Sam Kutesa, who wants to come the UN Assembly president. Simply, it is not happening.
Yes. And I understand. I mean, look at the United States of America. We are represented as united. So whoever we send anywhere in the world to speak on behalf of the American people, it is on behalf of all of the American people. They have the interests of all people at heart. This is the reason why we feel so strongly about the fact that this cannot happen and should not happen. I remember when President Nixon had to step down from office for Watergate. I mean, there are things that just cannot be accepted in any society that governs the people. And when these things show themselves in the way that they do, we all have to pay attention and take notice. We may not get the opportunity again. And so we have to make sure that history does not repeat itself over and over and over again. When someone goes to bed hungry in Africa at night, my heart aches. When someone goes to a doctor and they have no money and they're turned away in Africa, my heart aches. When people have to lay on the floor of a hospital in Africa to die because there are no beds, my heart aches. When people are treated as if they are no better than African Americans were treated in the 1800s in slavery, I have a problem with that. I have a big problem with that because I know and I understand the struggle that we had to go through in the United States of America for our freedom. And I understand and I know the people that are put in place in our government now and in our lives to protect that. And we all protect that and we all embrace that. It's not the African Americans that protect and embrace that. We all embrace it because we know that when African Americans in the United States of America move forward, we move forward as a nation, we move forward as a whole, and we grow together. You cannot have a dictatorship that feels like he has all the answers for this country in the way that it should be ran. Too many times the Ugandan people continue to fall short on everything that they need in order to move forward and to move the country forward. The interesting thing to me, Dorothy, is a lot of the young people in Uganda are the ones that are starting to rise up and make their voices heard. And my prayer is that those of the older generations will drop the way in which they have been taught to think about things, not live in a society of fear anymore, because this man does not rule and they need to show them that he can no longer rule them out of fear. The young are accepting that, they're embracing that, and they're standing up. You have 32 million people in Uganda, and you have one man and his family that is ruling this. I say the time has come for the people to realize how strong they are, how big they are, how mighty they are, and how grand they are in numbers. 32 million people. You had 16,000 people, which was the margin in the election there in the central region for Brenda Nabakenya to win the election. 16,000. Imagine the voices of 32 million Ugandans, how it would ring out in the world to let us know that these people no longer want to live under dictatorship. At that point, they start to give us the rings. They give us the rings in France. They give us the rings in UK, America, and around the world to say, let's help these people win back their country and move themselves forward in peace and equality and justice for all of the Ugandan people. 16,000 people have spoken out, and look at the mass media and how we've grabbed a hold of it, and we're making a difference in the way their voices are heard. Imagine if the 32 million started to make their voices heard, how we could put out this fire that is a small fire within a family that is burning out of control. We have a call that's coming in. Hey, caller, go ahead and introduce yourself and come on into the conversation.
Hey, this is Mobiru Msoke.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm calling just to make 2 points on this topic of discussion which you are talking about today, about Kutesa. The first point is that we have to understand the nature of dictators. Dictators tend to be arrogant and by nature. And of course, as Lawrence pointed out, also micromanagers. They don't believe other people have the capacity to do anything efficiently and properly. But in the absence of strong institutions, which is the case of Uganda, to cut down the arrogance of dictators, the dictators delude themselves into believing that they are politically infallible, which is not true, of course. And this brings me to the second point. The second point is that morality is part of politics in a democratic process. Ethical behavior is expected from all politicians and all those who participate in the process. Why is this? Why am I pointing out this? I'm pointing out this because when you lie, you breach the ethical requirements of a democratic process. And, this is what Kutesa has done. No parliament passes a law, goes through the entire process of moving motions, first reading, second reading, third reading, and then the signature of the president. You can't go through all that process when the law is not intended to be enforced. So these people are lying, and this blatant lie clearly shows that they lack the ethical standards required to operate democratic institutions like the presidency of the United Nations. If this guy is lying outright to the people, what do you expect? You can't expect any ethical behavior from him when he takes over the position of the presidency of the United Nations. The United Nations, of course, is supposed to be a democratic process, not perfect, but when you bring in people like, Kutesa or any other person from an undemocratic regime, I think you tend to dilute the democratic process of the United Nations, much as one would wish not to do that. But I think now it is clear to the whole world that Kutesa is not qualified to occupy such an important post, which requires somebody who is ethical in order to perform democratic functions within the United Nations. So that's the point, the small point that I want to raise, so that the people can understand. Some people, of course, believe that politics and morality don't go together, but I disagree. You cannot have a true democratic process without ethical standards. That's why even here in the United States and other democratic countries, politicians are investigated all the time for unethical conduct, because ethical conduct is essential in a democratic process. And as far as I'm concerned, Kutesa has disqualified himself by failing to be ethical. When he lies, he makes an opening. He thinks that this the process he's going through to assume the presidency of the United Nations is like Uganda. The two are very different. You cannot lie and engage in unethical behavior or conduct and still expect that you qualify to occupy such a high position in the United Nations. So I hope people realize this, and those who have not signed the petition against Kutesa, now they have a good reason to do so. So I'll stop there and let other people, contribute to the same debate. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor. It is always a pleasure to have you on board and to hear your insight that helps us to understand even to a greater degree. Dorothy, we're winding down here, so let me go ahead and give you about 3 or 4 minutes to go ahead and respond to the callers that we've had and do your closing arguments here. You have about 4 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Ms. Brenda, once again. We cannot retire. We cannot tire. I would like to thank Mr. Mbiru. I would like to thank all our callers and listeners. Thank you so much for the education, for the great lessons. Always we count on you. First of all, what I want to say is that Mr. Mbiru is a lawyer and he knows what he's talking about. Okay.
Yes.
This kind of arrogance, because you just hear that from the statement. This is not local politics of Uganda, people whom you lie to, people whom you torture, you mistreat, and it should stay that way. That is normal. So you just, in other words, they are just saying, you shut up, don't fight, let the man go through the way they say in Uganda, you know. But guess what? It's not going to be like that. Miss Brenda, I was surprised. I'm not joking. Radio France, you went in there to bargain for them to support you on this.
Yes.
And they ask you a question, and you say, that's not true. That's a lie. I'm not bothered. And then the president, the Ugandan parliament, passed the law, and the president signed it, but it will not be implemented. But what kills me, the president of Uganda, President Bill Clinton, calls in, I'm like, what's going on? What are you doing here? This law, oh, it was signed, but it's not going to be implemented. Then you hear, now you can connect the president of a country and his top advisor, who is a lawyer. And he goes to France to say, hey, this bill is passed, but it's not going to be implemented. For those of you who have any doubts, because go to Observer, read this article about the Human Rights Watch and the Amnesty International report about what is happening to the gay people in Uganda. So I have read the summary. You go and read the article yourself. So Mr. Samukutesa, the professor said it. You disqualified yourself, and you have so many things against you. So, with that, Ms. Brenda, the base of UN is human rights support. Human rights.
Yes.
Surely. What kills me, and I will fight, and I will fight, and we will fight, my fellow Ugandans, we will stand up to the truth and justice. The UN chair is known to be used to neutralize and meet the interest of these people, to defend themselves and wash away all the torture, the killings, and the sufferings of Uganda and neighboring countries for the last 30 years. God forbid the UN chair will not be used for this. And for that matter, the UN itself will stand to prove its creation and obligations. Should they allow this to be, we count on them, they are accountable. The presidents of the nations, the global world who have served their nations faithfully, how could they sit and some are presiding over this? Please, we keep the spirit up. You go and sign the petition if you haven't signed. More signatures are needed, and we need this. Okay? Now, as far as Brenda Nabukunya is concerned, and the Ruel elections in Ruel, this is the beginning. This is the beginning of a new day. So Mr. Mbiru mentioned how the youth have suffered in Uganda. Nabukunya, you are the face of the youth today. The youth have been killed. They have been intimidated. There is an agenda to make sure that they warm them up a little bit in order to be able to take orders from the army, and they are sent over the world to fight. And remember, a Ugandan soldier in Southern Sudan is worth $100 either dead or alive. So the youth of Uganda, you stand up today and reclaim what is yours. Okay? You are the younger trees in the forest, and Uganda counts on you. And in Kenya, this is the beginning of the revolution, of the movement, of re-educating the people to stand up. So what has happened in the world is just the beginning. Until we escort Mr. Museveni out of power, to give other people chance to participate, not lose them, in the bid that the dictator cannot fight a man-to-man fight. So he cannot face competition. Now, Kenya, you stand up with the rest of the youth and you fight for Uganda. And for that reason, we call for unity. Means Brenda, I stress this. We can't stress this enough. But what we have to realize is power. Power.
Yes.
We can give them 71 million Ugandans. They are not that many, we know that. But remember people's power and unity. There was a picture on Observer where Professor Kenya was speaking and Brenda was standing just behind him as a little girl, and he's watching his father addressing the country. So please, opposition leaders, keep it up. Unity, we are many, we have the power, Uganda belongs to us. If it was, President Museveni was given a job which refuses to leave, and he's not performing to our expectations. Not 1%.
Yes, and I'm gonna leave that as closing arguments because we have ran out of time here on the American Connection here on Voice Uganda Radio. Thank you so much for being a part of the program. Thank you so much for all of your participation in the program. We will be coming back to you on Wednesdays from 10 o'clock to noon here on Voice Uganda Radio on Wednesdays for American Connection. Don't forget to join us on Sundays where Madam Dorothy, the Honorable Zoe Bakoko, and I run that show, Freedom at Hand. The Honorable Zoe Bakoko will be with us next Wednesday as we continue to talk about the issues in America that greatly involve us here, from what happens there on the continent of Africa, especially in Uganda. Thank you so much for all of our callers. Thank you so much for being a part of the program. Remember that these broadcasts will be put out on YouTube, keyword Voice Uganda Radio, and you can find today's program out there later on today or in the morning. So please, if you missed any part of it or if you'd like to listen to it again, you can go out there and listen to it on YouTube, keyword Voice Uganda Radio. God bless each and every one of you, and thank you so much for being a part of the struggle with us for a new Uganda, moving the Ugandan people forward. I am your host, Miss Brenda, here on the American Connection. Thank you, and you are listening to Voice of Uganda Radio.
abakuwaga bakutomeza sibandobo uliriza nyabo balinda lulibwa obulali bakube bakalosomagire ebibyo basoma